So I have no idea how to introduce a video, to be honest, like, at all, but oh well. Anyway, so, as you might have guessed from the title, or possibly the thumbnail, I don't know what I'm doing for that, or possibly even the big letters in the middle of the screen, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the Netflix show Atypical that came out, I don't know, sometime in 2017, and the second season came out in 2018 sometime, like a few months back, and I mean, if I'd done this at closer to either of those things happening, then this would have gotten probably more attention, but I hadn't watched it, and then when I had watched it, I needed like months to kind of recover from it, and then, I didn't feel like doing this, and then now I have exams next week, so this is as good a way to procrastinate as anyway. So, right, so, I mean, I don't know how to edit videos, to be fair, or anything much about videos at all, really, but, I did up a neat little PowerPoint that's gonna help with the whole keeping me on topic thing, because, I mean, alright, so what gives me, basically why I'm making this video is because, like, I am a person with autism, and this show is about a person with autism, and, like, it, in my opinion, does a really terrible job at representing autism, and it's, like, just kind of harmful, and I'm going to be discussing that. So anyway, I did up this PowerPoint for, I mean, it'll help, like, you viewers, like all 12 of you, keep track of what I'm talking about, and also it'll help keep me on topic because I have attention problems sometimes, and then, if I'm ever droning off, I can look at the screen and be like, ooh, bright lights, and then I'll remember what I'm supposed to be talking about, and it'll be neat. So anyway, gonna start jumping into the discussion. I said, yeah, let's go with discussion. So, anyway, oh yeah, right, the quality's gonna be bad because, I can't afford a mic, because, I'm in college, I can barely afford rent. It's neat. Oh, also, tangent. Sorry. Anyway, so, let's just move on to, oh, okay, I don't know how to go back. I'm not good at PowerPoints either. Oh well, anyway, let's leave this here for a second, and I'm just gonna say that, I feel like I have to say that, just so that I'm gonna be spoiling heavily. I'm gonna be spoiling the show pretty heavily, and I should say it, that just to make sure I'm not misrepresenting it, if you care, you might want to watch it, just so that you know that, like, I'm not deliberately misrepresenting Atypical to serve any agenda, but also, love yourself, don't watch this, it's not great. Like, representation of autism aside, even if it represented autism really, really well, like, my reaction to watching it would have been, oh, the show's not great, but at least the representation of autism was kind of decent, but no, it has very little going for it at all. But, watch it to make sure I'm not misrepresenting, I guess, if you want to spend, like, 10 hours doing that. Have fun! Okay, so, just for a fair discussion, I should discuss the things that Atypical does well. Fortunately for me, and, my mouth getting dry, there aren't that many of them. Like, the one that springs to mind, this is specifically referring to its representation of autism. Like, some of the performances were okay, but that's not entirely relevant to this, so I'm specifically talking about the autism representation. And in the second season, specifically in response to criticism for not doing this, it included several autistic characters portrayed by actors who were also people with autism, and that's neat. It gives, it gives actors with autism a chance to represent themselves, and that's just, like, it would improve the quality of the representation, because, if you have autism, you typically know something about it. I say in my experience, yeah, like, if you have been diagnosed with autism, you would know something about it, so, the representation would naturally improve slightly because of that. But also, that was specifically in response to criticism, which is good that they took that criticism on board, but they didn't take everything else on board. which is not ideal. Anyway, that's about it for what Atypical does well. Neat. So let's move on to the next point. This is like, it's not. I'm not going to be talking entirely about Atypical for this specific point. This is just the general representation of autistic characters in the media, and in general, like I've consumed a reasonable amount of media that deals with autistic characters because, well, on the one hand, I have autism, and representation would be neat. And sometimes some people will tell me that something is great representation, then I'll watch it, then it doesn't, and sometimes The Big Bang Theory will be on constantly and mildly infuriating me. Is what it is. But anyway, so there is a trend of one specific trope, I suppose, as autistic main characters or relatively important characters in TV shows, books, etc., etc. That is, as you might gather from this bottom text, scrawny white asshole boys. Like, for examples, there's Sam from Atypical. Like, I'm gonna be discussing his character in more detail later, but he is in fact all of those, I guess. And there's Sheldon. I feel like most of you will have probably been unlucky enough to have seen The Big Bang Theory. It is on a lot, and if not, check it out. They don't need more viewers at all. Then there's the Curious Incident of the Dog of the Nighttime is this is going to be something I'm going to be coming back to as well for this point specifically, because the reason that this trope exists is because of this goddamn book ruining everything. But I'll come back to that in a moment. And then that's me. I am also a scrawny white boy. And I don't know. Someone probably thinks I'm an asshole. Yeah, I can think of a couple. They might be right. Who knows? Not the point. Whether or not I'm a good person is not relevant to how autism is portrayed. That's, I don't know, the problem of people who have to deal with me? Sure. But I'm not as bad as these guys, so it's okay. Sure. Anyway, there's my big text again. I figured out how to duplicate slides for this. Like, you can tell it's a high-end video. But anyway, so essentially, the trope of it all stemmed from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which is like, a lot of people think it's a really great book. I didn't like it very much, and I really don't think it had a good long-term effect on how autism is perceived. Because, alright, so essentially, my main issue with it is that it is seen as essentially a holy grail of autism representation. As in, you'll read this, and you will understand autism, but you won't. You might have a better understanding of the specific type of autism that this one little boy in the book has, and that is about it. But as in, I could not relate. I could barely relate at all to the character as an autistic person, and I know I've talked to other people with autism who have had similar experiences to me reading it, and that's not a criticism of the book per se. It's just that it cannot be seen as representing all autistic people, while there are people with autism who do not relate to the character, or who are very different people to the character portrayed in the book. But I guess some people don't get that, or they're lazy, or they want it to be obvious that it's a person with autism, so they use the one type of autism that people understand, or that's the TV family comedy friendly autism, which is just scrawny white asshole boys. So it's let's go back. So, and it's that's not good, because there's so many types of people with autism, and it's also not all boys and not all white people, obviously. there's no reason at all that it would be, but that's, I mean, not counting the support group from the second season created specifically in response to criticism for doing this and other things. It's just the portrayal of autism in almost all media. And that's a shame, because it's not a very nuanced portrayal of a condition that has a very wide variety of, I don't want to say symptoms, I can't think of the word, but every person with autism will be different. Like, as in, it's the same with every neurotypical person, but like the effects of autism on each person will also be different. And like, if every portrayal is like just a slight variation, that's not good. But like, to make matters worse, it's a very negative portrayal of people with autism. Like, Sam's a prick. Like, he means well some of the time, I guess, and that's great and all, but like, he just insults people all the time, and it's just so obnoxious. And it's like, if there was if that wasn't all of them, if that wasn't the only portrayal of people with autism, that would be fine. But it is. There aren't like very well publicized, like well-known portrayals of people with autism where they're not just really blunt and obnoxious and just unpleasant. And that's not good. Like, even, I'm going to refer back to the support group, because that is the show's response to criticism, essentially, is to include that. That's not something stated, it's just, it feels like it was. But, like, even in that, they were still all just so obnoxious and unpleasant and would do things that, like, would morally not be seen as great. I'm coming back to that as well, so, you know. But, like, it's a problem when every portrayal of a condition that has so many variations is just so negative. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, it leads to just a generally negative perception of people with autism, which I keep saying I'm going to come back to things, but I promise I am. I built this PowerPoint 20 minutes ago. I know what I'm coming back to, kind of. So I'm going to move on now, I guess. This is just getting... I'm going to get frustrated making this. That's not going to be optimal. Oh well. So, okay, right. So this is my next topic, which is that, alright, so here's... When I first went to watch the show, I had some concerns, just like from the outset, because it was a comedy based on a person, with the premise of it dealing with a person with autism trying to get a girlfriend, which is, it feels like a premise that will just lead to Sam being the butt of a lot of jokes at his expense because he has autism. But I gave it a chance anyway, because I had been told by someone I knew that the representation was really, really good. But it isn't. And, like, I don't hold it against that person. Like, they're neurotypical, they probably just didn't notice. That's not an attack on neurotypical people at all. Like, I also know neurotypicals who did see the problems with it very early on. But, like, I don't think it's an unfair statement to say that when I am the demographic that it is dealing with, I would see issues with it easier than someone who is less personally affected by it. So, anyway, that was a tangent. Oh, if I was editing this, I would not be in for an enjoyable experience. Luckily, I'm using my exams as an excuse to not do that. Neat. Anyway, back to the topic. So, I go in, and alright, so I'm gonna deal with one specific joke 4 minutes in that at the time, like, there had been other stuff before the 4 minutes in joke that had kind of frustrated me, but this joke was just, it made me stop watching for like half an hour, because it was so needless and just mean-spirited. But anyway, so the joke was, alright, so Sam had been to see his counselor, I guess, Julia, and essentially the conversation had ended with the conclusion of how Sam should try to put himself out there and possibly try to find a girlfriend or something. So then, at the dinner table, Sam, like, completely unprompted, just comes out with, Julia said I should put myself out there and find someone to have sex with. And then there's, right, so the height of comedy, as you can gather, and, like, alright, so let's just dissect the comedic brilliance of that joke. Okay, so the first premise is, look at this stupid autistic saying something really, really in a terrible time, and to say it around the wrong people to say that to, and the thing he said was so stupid. Look at this autistic being dumb. It's very funny. And the second part of the premise of this really great joke is, wow, this autistic person who can't even do social stuff properly thinks he'll find someone to have sex with? No. And, like, it's just not. It's so mean-spirited. That's the only reason they would phrase it that way, is if they wanted to make that joke. Like, Julia hadn't said anything about sex. Even Sam acknowledges that she hadn't, the sentence after. But they wanted to make that specific part of the joke, just to make it so much more jarring that, like, this little shit who can't do anything socially properly because he's autistic thinks he'll have someone to have sex with, be able to find someone who will have sex with him. But yeah, so, like, it was very needless and mean-spirited, and, like, as from my subheading, it is laughing at the disabled. Like, that's not fair. Like, if it was a joke at the expense of someone in a wheelchair and that was just making fun of them for not being able to walk or finding it hard to get upstairs or some shit, like, that would obviously be criticized by, like, most people, probably, because it's in terrible taste, and it is the same principle of, like, just laughing at people for a social disability, and that's not good. So, yeah, that's the problems with that one joke, but, like, that's just the general tone of the show. It's just a lot of jokes at the expense of Sam, the autistic character, and even the other autistic characters who get introduced in the second season in the support group, or it's like they're still used as just the butt of jokes. That doesn't change. That's not a criticism they want to respond to. They're still gonna laugh at the autistics, because of course they are. Anyway, I'm getting frustrated again. Let's move on. Oh yeah, right, support group, neat. I've mentioned these boys a couple times, but, like, although they are the one thing the show does well is having them portrayed by actors with autism, which is neat, there's a lot of issues there. They're all still pretty obnoxious, and also there's this one thing that's just leaning into the general portrayal of autism in the show. There's this one moment where, okay, so Sam, in the second season, there's this episode, and Sam described, basically, he's applying for colleges, and he describes his apprehension at the fact that, you know, he's moving away, and he's nervous, essentially, and he's, like, he basically thinks he basically catastrophizes the situation. Like, he just takes it from one thing to another, and reaches a really unpleasant conclusion about how it's just, like, all doom and gloom. And I don't remember exactly what he said anymore because it's been a while, but anyway, so one person in his support group then decides, oh no, this is going to be really bad for him. I'll steal his notebook. And that way he won't go to college and everything will be a-okay. And then obviously his notebook that he needed to apply for college is, I should explain. His notebook has all his sketches and his notebook had stuff for his portfolio, or maybe she just stole the portfolio. It doesn't matter. But anyway, he wanted to go to art college. So she steals that, and then at the end of the episode, it all gets given back to him, and like, the problem is that it's portraying a thing of, yeah, people with autism, they mean well, but they're gonna do all this unacceptable shit constantly. Like Sam wanting to get with his counselor for half a season and ruining her relationship. And like, he didn't mean badly when he was doing it, but he did it, and it's not an acceptable thing to do. It's the same with this girl almost sabotaging Sam going to college. She didn't mean badly, she meant to help him, but it's not acceptable. And like, what this portrays is that people with autism are gonna do all this terrible shit, and it's like, again, I don't have any problem. Okay, not again, but I don't have any problem necessarily with characters with autism being portrayed as bad people. Because, like, some autistic people aren't good people. I know some who aren't, but it's the same with neurotypicals. The problem is that, again, there's nothing else. There's no representation of people with autism where they're fairly chill, they don't ruin anyone's relationships or try to sabotage someone going to college. They're just kind of alright, good people, don't cause massive problems for everyone around them, aren't obnoxious to everyone, because not every person with autism is like that or does that stuff. But that's the only representation out there, and that's not good. So, oh, the stimming scene. Ooh, this was fun. And this, right. So, for those who are unaware, stimming is, I don't know how to explain it properly, but it's like repetitive actions that, I use them to focus mostly. I don't know the technical definition. But anyway, basically, in my case, it's mostly I'll tap my fingers together to try and concentrate and focus better. And the special interest are people with autism getting mad interested in stuff, like to a point of obsession. Like I had, for years, I had a massive obsession with Pokemon. I would know just about everything about it, and now I only have a slight obsession with Pokemon where I don't know as much. And it was before it was Pokemon, it was, I don't know, dinosaurs probably. Like, my mom still knows so much dinosaur trivia because I bombarded her with it for about 6 years. From like the ages of 2 till 8, I was just a font of dinosaur trivia, and now my mom can't forget any of it. So, yeah, it's just like a common thing among people with autism is getting very, very into things, like to an extent that isn't common, I guess, among a lot of neurotypicals who, they're obviously interested in things too, but I don't know how to explain that properly either. It's hard to get unless you've experienced it. I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't know. You can Google it. I might include an article about it in the description if I can find a decent one. So anyway, the problem with the show is that it plays no, it doesn't. It plays special interest for laughs, and it does it right after. Okay, so first 4 minutes of episode 1. Again, let's go back to these. The best 4 minutes of my entire life. So it shows him stimming, and that's actually pretty good. Like, it didn't laugh at that, but then it did. It ruined it. It blew everything. Because as soon as it cut away from that scene and just went to him, I really like penguins, which is both laughing at his special interest and playing a laugh, which is both, yeah, it was just played for comedy, and it was done immediately after the stimming, and it was just like, yeah, let's jar the audience into laughing at the autistic boy saying something kind of ridiculous, and then but the problem is that it makes the stimming also seem ridiculous, and it's like, stimming is something that, like, especially if what you do is noticeable, it can get comments on anyway. So like, when I was younger, I'd be kind of insecure about this stuff, and if I saw a TV show just making fun of it. Like, younger, insecure me would have would have possibly stopped, would have tried to just avoid doing it constantly, and that wouldn't have gone super well for me, because it's like a kind of necessary thing to do. But you know, older insecure me is insecure about different stuff, so I mean, I can watch Atypical safely, I guess, except for when it frustrated me massively and repeatedly. But, you know, is what it is. So I just think that it's not, I mean, it's not the biggest deal, I guess, compared to some of the other stuff, but it's not great. And I felt like I should comment on it. I just end all of these saying, that's not great. But, like, it isn't. And, anyway. Yeah, you know it's gonna be good when I saw you reading what slide it is. So, Atypical repeatedly represents Sam as a burden on his family, and that's really harmful. Nice. So, basically, throughout the show, Sam is like, yeah, exactly as I said, he's represented as a burden, and particularly, I'm going to focus on another scene from the first season because it's so ridiculous, but essentially, in the first season, there's a subplot where the mother has an affair, then their marriage falls apart, which is what would be whatever, like, you know, people have affairs sometimes, I guess, and that's terrible, like, as in having an affair is not a good thing to do, but it's like, I wouldn't have a problem with an affair subplot apart from, it was in relation to this topic in particular, but the problem is that the reason that his mother has an affair, I don't remember her name, it's been months, whatever, I'll just dehumanize her and call her his mother. Anyway, Sam's mother has an affair on Sam's father with a bartender whose name I don't remember any names except Sam and Julia, the counselor, but I get so easily off topic. Christ. Anyway, so Sam's mother has the affair, but the reason she has the affair is because she's frustrated with her life and she never gets to do anything. And guess what? The reason that she's frustrated with her life and never gets to do anything is it's because she's always caring for her autistic son, Sam, who ruined her life and eventually her marriage and through everything in the turmoil. Isn't that nice? And that's repeated, like, there's other examples of him just being a burden and preventing them from doing normal family stuff throughout the show. And this is seen in other representations of autism too, like, let's go back to Big Bang Theory because it's really easy to pick on and no one claims it's good representation, but it still makes the relevant point and it comes across anyway. So, when Sheldon and Amy's relationship, like, the biggest hiccup is that Amy just wants a normal relationship, but oh gosh darn it, Sheldon's too autistic to give that to her. Oops. And it's like, it's just, in all these representations of autism, I don't remember Curious Incident of the Dog at the Nighttime, but I feel like that, I'm actually not, I mean, okay, right, so, just assume I'm spoiling Curious Incident until I move on to the next slide. Okay, so, Curious Incident, from what I remember, the dad killed the dog, and the dad killed the dog because he got, like, mad, frustrated at his life, and his son being so gosh darn autistic. I don't know, there was more to it than that, I know there was, but, like, it was still a part of it, like, it was absolutely a part of the dad's frustration at his life, and it resulted in the murder of the dog that set up the plot, part of the plot in motion, and, you know, that's just not very optimal. Because it's like, just yet another example of like how having a child with autism will directly be bad. It'll just be bad for your life. Like, it's not something you want. It's like, you know, like I'm not saying that it isn't difficult to raise children with autism, because it absolutely can be. I was a massive pain. But it'd absolutely be harder to raise some children with autism than to raise some neurotypical children. But like, it's still like needless to portray that. It's the same way that people have problems with autism parents who just like complain about their children on social media. It's the same principle as that, but just like there's no massive discernible difference. It's just autistics being a burden on their parents / their people around them in general, and that's just another harmful piece of representation. I've already kind of explained this, but let's go further. Like, this is, for a lot of people for quite a while, this could be like watching TV shows that portray autistic characters could be their only experience of people with autism, because a lot of people with autism don't advertise it as much. Like, I'm relatively open about it, but because, I mean, I just don't care that much anymore. But a lot of people aren't, and there's a lot of understandable reasons for that. But, and then regardless, like, even if you, like, so a lot of people won't know anyone with autism. Or if they do, they won't know that they are a person with autism. And their only experience of these people will be in TV shows or books like this. So if the only portrayal they're getting is a negative one, this helps build up a negative impression of people with autism. Like, maybe not even consciously, but on some level, like, if this is their only knowledge of autism, it's not good knowledge to have. So, yeah, I don't actually think I missed anything. Like, there's been a lot of me complaining about editing that I didn't plan to put in. I mean, really should learn to edit at some point. If I do any more videos, which I might, to be honest. There's some other things I could talk about. I could, you know, play some Pokemon, or talk about communism, or possibly, I think, or, you know, more autism stuff, I guess, if I feel annoyed enough about something, or like saying a thing. But anyway, so my main conclusion is that, like, autism representation in general is really, really deeply flawed, but atypical in particular. What's especially bad about it is that its primary purpose is, I mean, okay, like, yeah, like, it is an expressed intention of representing autism, and like that is, and it puts such a focus on it, and the fact that it does such a bad job, while still claiming to be making an honest attempt at representing it, makes it a lot more harmful than, say, something like The Big Bang Theory, where it's a piss take and no one really considers it serious autism representation. But in the case of Atypical, there's a lot more potential for harm if it's done poorly, and unfortunately it really was, and that's not good. And like, me and other people with autism deserve a lot better representation, like, than this. So yeah, I mean, that's just about all I have to say on this. Right, so, nice. That's a good way to go. Bye.